8.2. Vocabulary. Parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both pairs of sides parallel. Theorem 8.3. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its opposite sides are congruent. And remember, congruent means equal in length and shape. So if PQRS is a parallelogram, then RS is congruent to QP. I put the little line over it because we're talking. Okay, notice that I did not say RS is congruent to PQ. And that's because if I started at R up here and went down to S, I need to start at Q and go down to P. Because we're saying that R is a kind of a match to Q. So we want to go in the same direction. So QR is congruent to PS. Okay, and those are these over here. Theorem 8.4. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its opposite angles are congruent. So, if angle P is in the parallelogram, it's congruent to angle R. And what is congruent to angle S? Angle Q. So example 1, use these properties. Find the values of x and y. So we know that opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. This is an easy way to write that. So FG is the same measure as JH. We didn't put a line above FG this time in JH because we're talking about the measure. We're not talking about the shape of it or the size of it. So we know that x plus 6 is the same as JH, so 13. And so we know that x must be equal to 7. And then find y, or h, angle h, which is y. So angle F equals angle H, congruent to. So the measure, remember what the little m means, measure angle F is the measure of angle H. So y also equals 68 degrees. So in parallelogram FGHJ, then x was 7 and y was 68 degrees. Okay, theorem 8.5. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then it's consecutive angles. So consecutive means in a row. So two angles in a row are supplementary. So if PQRS is a parallelogram, then x plus y equals 180. Almost messed that up, didn't I? 180. Example 2. Gates. As shown, a gate contains several parallelograms. Find the measure of angle A to D to C. So we're talking about this angle with the vertex right here. When angle DAB, so DAB, let's change color so we can see it better. DAB, vertex right here, equals 65. So what do we know about those two angles? We know they are consecutive angles. So consecutive angles are supplementary. And so the measure of ADC plus DAB equals 180. So 180 minus 65 is 115. Okay, checkpoint. Go ahead and do those three. Start again the video when you're done. Okay, theorem 8.6. Quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Then its diagonals bisect each other. So Q to M segment is to segment MS. Oops, what did I do wrong here? Q to M, which point would match the Q? S to M. So let's mark that out, put SM. P to M is the same as R to M. Okay. Example 3. The diagonals of STUV intersect at point W. Find the coordinates of W. So by theorem 8.6, the diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. So W is the midpoint, remember that from chapter 1, of the diagonals. And then so we need to use the midpoint formula. Do you remember the midpoint formula? It is midpoint of the x equals the first x plus the second x divided by 2. And then the same with the y. Okay, so here we go. What is, now you might be saying, which one do I use? Do I use S to U or do I use T to V? Well, what do we know about their midpoints there? They're both the same. So it doesn't really matter what I use. Which one would be easier to use? Well, S to U. Can you tell why? It's because its S is at point 0, 0. And that's always nice to add, isn't it? So 0 plus, okay, now we need to find where our U is. U is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on the X, and how many up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 on the Y. So 0 plus 6 divided by 2, and then 0 plus 5 divided by 2. And that equals 3, and then 2.5. All right. Checkpoint. Okay, go ahead and do those two, and you are done. Now, before you leave, make sure that you really understand what parallelogram is, because when we get 5 or 6 shapes, you're going to start confusing them. So if you still have the video on, let's go over this one more time. So parallelograms, they have opposite sides parallel. They have opposite sides congruent. They have opposite angles congruent. And they have supplementary or consecutive angles add to 180. Okay. They also have diagonals that bisect each other. So this one is equal to that one. They also cross at the midpoint. Okay, so remember all that.